and welcome to episode number 40 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam.
I'm Sahil.
And you are no longer perfect on the season. You have tied your matchup. For the first time, you did not come out victorious.
It's a bummer. First time in the podcast era that I have lost or have not won the matchup. I did tie, so that makes it a little better. It was preventable. There were definitely some lineup decisions I could have made to get some doubles guys in there that would have given me a W. But honestly, my offense played like shit, and I was probably overdue for a loss or two at some point. Just like negative regression was due to hit me. So kudos to Alex. His team really hung in there and put up a good fight. I would have beat him in a traditional 7-day matchup, but of course, at the All-Star break, we had 10 days, and those last 3 days worked out. I just needed one double on Sunday, and none of my guys hit a double. And he hit one, so that was enough. But hopefully my team uses this and gets stronger from it. That's all I can say. I'm definitely bummed out.
Yeah, no, you're like you said, your first time tying or losing in the podcast era, and this is our 40th episode. You've gone 40 episodes without that, and we're coming up on a year of podcasts, and you had been just winning every single week in between then and now. So good streak coming to an end. And yeah, it was a long week because of the All-Star break. That led to a lot of really interesting matchups. Me and Erik, in particular, we'll talk about that, but especially with all the playoff implications. But he was beating me after 7 days, but I flipped the matchup on the 10th and final day. And it's definitely interesting. In a normal week, he would have beaten me, but also the 10-day week kind of takes some of the randomness out of the matchups.
Yeah, it really does. I guess you could argue it's more random because after the break, teams like reset their rotation and stuff. So you had a couple guys get like 3 starts this week, and then some guys like have the phantom IL stints, or they only started 1 game because they had a 1-start week the first part of the week, and then they're not starting until the beginning of this week. So it's definitely interesting how this all played out. But we're definitely going to dig into this quite a bit. Despite it being a 10-day matchup, I mean, it still counts for the same in the standings. So
that is true. And do we want to talk about the standings briefly before we get into the individual matchups?
Yeah, let's do that, because it's like very interesting. Like I would say a couple weeks ago, it really looked like there's this kind of rigid hierarchy. And we kind of went into this when we did the power rankings where, we thought I was the 1 seed. We thought you and Erik could be 2 and 3 in some order. We thought, Anthony, Conor, and Ruthvik and Nick would kind of be 4, 5, 6. But since then, the standings have kind of become really jumbled. With Erik losing to you, Erik now has the same record as Anthony. And Conor is only a half game back of both of them. Clayton and Jake have now recaptured the 6th seed thanks to a 2-game winning streak. And Ruthvik and Nick have fallen out of the playoff bracket with 3 straight losses. They were 5-4-2. Now they're 5-7-2. So they have the same record as EBO, who's kind of hanging around in there. And even Andrew's only a game back to the playoffs. So there's like 9 teams fighting for 6 spots. And really, I think it's like more like 5 teams having a spot, with like 2 through 5 still kind of up in the air, like as how the seeding will go. And then like 3 or 4 teams fighting for that 6th seed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ruthvik's team has collapsed. And they started out winning their first 3, including win over Erik and win over EBO, but they really have not been the same since. Whereas Clayton and Jake's team has just had this meteoric rise. They were sellers at the end of the end of May, and suddenly they've won a bunch straight. They're the 6th seed, and I'm not expecting them to make a playoff run or anything, but if they hold on to the playoff spot, that would be remarkable. It was where we expected them to be before the season, but still an excellent job to get back there.
Now they're doing it in a very different manner than I thought they would. They traded away a lot of this veteran pitching, and they've gotten back a couple of young hitters. They got Kyle Lewis, they got Luke Voigt. So the team looks different, but yeah, they're rolling right now, and it'll be interesting to see what they do at the deadline, because I could see them kind of doing some buying and some selling. Like they might think like, hey, like this isn't our year, but we're kind of getting close to competing. So let's buy some pieces that'll be able to help us in future years, while also maybe continuing to unload some of their older veterans who, might not have as much time to contribute, to their team in the long term. Like, just speculatively, maybe like a Michael Brantley type. So it'll be interesting to see how this works out for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just kind of looking at the 3 teams at the bottom, you mentioned this to me earlier in the week. There are 3 teams that are definitely not making a playoff push this year unless something crazy happens. That is Alex and Zach, the Fighting Bellies. I guess it's the Fightin' Bellies now that Greg has joined. And Yuki's team, Moneyball. And if they play their cards right, they could get massive returns for some of their players, just with all of the teams fighting, jockeying for position, or jockeying for that last playoff spot. They could, if they wanted to sell one of their top players, like, I don't know, Bryce Harper, for instance, or anyone else like that, they could really put a big kick in their rebuilds and get some good prospects or young major leaguers.
Oh yeah, especially because I think they're the only. I mean, I think that they're Alex and Zach, and then Daniel, Alex, and Greg are also going to sell, but I don't know how many more sellable pieces that they have. Like Alex and Zach have gotten rid of a lot of their older players, and some of the older players that they do have are struggling, i.e. like Madison Bumgarner. I guess they have Robbie Ray as a trade chip. And then I don't think Daniel, Alex, and Greg are going to make any substantial changes at the deadline. So like Yuki, like you said, Bryce Harper, Clayton Kershaw comes back and he's healthy. He's got Kenley Jansen, he's got Ian Kennedy. He doesn't need either of them. Kenta Maeda, Dallas Keuchel, Adam Wainwright's having a surprisingly good year. Like, he could turn around his fortunes really quickly. I just don't really know what his willingness is going to be to actually do that.
Yeah, that's true. But I think the Tendies have some players, especially on the pitching side, that they could trade. Raisel Iglesias, for instance, the team that owned him in real life, trade him away, certainly got a good return for him, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm so sorry.
And Robbie Ray, of course, has just been remarkable this year. I'm surprised no one has acquired him yet.
He's put Robbie Ray in the block like a couple times now. I just feel like my problem with Ray is I look at him and I just can't shake like pre-2021 Ray out of my head. Like, if that walk rate creeps back up, he's still going to be valuable to strikeouts, but he's not going to be worth the price that you're going to have to pay. But he is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. He is. And I guess if you look at the hitters, he's got some guys who are having hot stretches. Tyler Naquin's had a solid year. He hasn't been amazing. And he was actually, I guess he wasn't a recent pickup. But he's kind of an older guy. And John Nagowski, I thought about picking him up this morning. He's a Pirates first baseman who's having a bit of a hot stretch type of guy. Erik always picks up. I chose not to pick him up. but at some point this morning, looks like it was actually 1:46 in the afternoon. Alex and Zach did end up picking him up, and if his hot streak continues for another week or two, maybe he could fetch a decent return.
Yeah, I think he could. I'm not counting on it.
No.
I mean, there's some interesting pieces here. Again, I think Robbie Ray is the big one, but there definitely, could be some other ones, or if Alex and Zach can get creative. Because I mean, I ranked them ninth in my power rankings. I think that they are really building up like an interesting farm system here, and if they can get a couple more prospects and some young studs to kind of build around. I mean, give this team a couple years. I think they could be real contenders if they play their cards right.
They can, and they were in the playoffs last year, and maybe it's not as good as the team they started out with after the draft, but they're some good players, and I really like this farm system a lot.
Oh yeah. Speaking of their run last year, interestingly enough, had there been an actual regular season last year, the week that they were supposed to play me, they would have crushed me like 10-1 to 1. So maybe they kind of have my number a little bit.
Maybe they do. They're a tricky matchup for sure, just with all of those pitchers they have. I feel like they match up really well against some of the better teams in this league.
No, they do. Because I mean, let's pull up this rotation here for a sec. I mean, like I know Casey Mize, they're having some shortened starts for him this year, but I think they're gonna take the kid gloves off next year. Framber Valdez has been pretty solid. His numbers aren't as good as they were after the first couple starts that he had coming off the IL, but he's still been pretty good. If they hold on to Robbie Ray, we just talked about him. Julio Urias has been very solid this year. You're finally taking the kid gloves off of him a bit. Freddie Peralta has kind of come out of nowhere to be an ace. Logan Gilbert, like his last few starts have been fantastic. He's only 24. So they have the guys in that rotation. Like this could be like one of the best young rotations in our league in like 2 years. Maybe even now, honestly.
I mean, I think I would buy that argument that they're one of the top rotations in the league now. They've just been bullying teams with all of the quality starts they get. It's kind of been a guaranteed win for them most weeks lately. It's felt like, I mean, just looking at the quality starts numbers, they are. Well, I guess they're fifth. That's surprising. It feels like they've gotten a lot more. Maybe they were slow starters in that category. They're also only fourth in strikeouts, but the rotation is really solid.
No, I think it will look better next year because I think you're going to have a couple of these like young rookie starters like Mize and Gilbert who are either going to get like shut down or have shorter starts or just go through kind of the whole general like rookie struggles at times. But it's good. This is even if you don't want to call them one of the best rotations right now, I think you could argue this is the most fun rotation with just all of these like young names they have.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, especially for the Tigers fans who want to see Mize succeed.
Oh yeah, no, easily.
But yeah, was there more we wanted to talk about in regards to standings, or are we ready to dive into last week's matchups?
No, I think the only other thing I'll say is that I don't feel like, and I guess we could throw last year out, but I don't feel like the first 2 seasons we had anything like this where there was like kind of like 9-ish teams in a hunt towards the end. Like I feel like this mix right now of having the 2 through 5 kind of up in the air as to like we know the teams that are going to be those seeds, but like who's going to be what seed, and then having like 3 teams competing for 6. I don't think we've seen that before, and I think it's really refreshing. I think that it makes it more interesting. There's more strategy that goes into this. It's going to be a seller's market, which I think is going to make for some really interesting trades. And I think it's going to be a really fun time over the next month for the league. Like I know that there's not a lot of trades going on right now. In fact, it's been almost a month since the last trade, but I think especially with the standings kind of tightening up a bit over the past like 3-4 weeks, I think you're going to see a flurry of moves as teams really try to separate themselves. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this all plays out.
Yeah, I think, it'll definitely be a seller's market, and there will be a lot of trades coming up early August. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, Yuki, if you're listening to this, you can literally rebuild your entire team just by trading Bryce Harper and Clayton Kershaw. Do it.
Do it.
It'll be fun.
It would be fun, and I would like those players.
Yeah, I bet you would. But all right, you want to get into the matchups?
Yes, you tied. Speaking of Alex and Zach's team, the team with the fun rotation, you tied them despite the fact that they had a down week from those starters.
Yeah, we kind of already dug into this at the very beginning, so I'm not going to go too in depth. But like, after forwarding with the 400 OBP the week before, like my offense just couldn't get out of their way. Even after the break, they struggled a bit, and I finished with a 280 OBP. That's not a recipe to win. I was kind of in the middle of the pack in some of these like counting stats. And in fact, I think my homer total would have beaten most teams, and same with the Ribby total. But it just wasn't enough because Alex's offense really came out swinging. Like I said, I had a couple chances where I could have gotten a win. Either Ranger Suarez blew a save on Saturday before the All-Star break. Trevino, who's pretty much taken over the closer's job, they let him pitch the 8th, and they let Diekman pitch the 9th because of matchups. So I got a hold instead of a save. That cost me. Like I said, benching Suarez a couple times. I benched Miguel Rojas one of the days I picked him up, and he had a double too. So this was bound to happen. I'm a bit frustrated. You know, I this was preventable. I could have easily picked up a win here and been 14-0, but I'm still going to be the 1 seed when this is all said and done. So, you know, I have my eye on the prize, which is the championship, and not 1 week at a regular season, you know, as fun as it would have been to have potentially gone undefeated. I know you and I were talking off the air, like, I don't think this tie is going to be the last time that I don't pick up a win in a week this season. I still have to play you and Erik each one more time. I actually have a 5-week stretch where I play 4 of those 5 weeks are against teams that are projected to get the 2 to 5 seeds right now. So I think I'll drop one of those. I think I'll end the season like 19-1-1 or something like that. But it is what it is. Kudos to Alex. I mean, we just talked up his team a lot. I think this is going to be a really good team in a couple of years. They're not quite there yet, but they've been playing a lot better as of late. And it's going to be really interesting to watch this team develop the next couple of years. And I think if they play their cards right at the deadline, I mean, they will be a lot improved. I mean, you know, we talked about the rotation, but I think you'd argue they have a top 2 or 3 farm system right now too. So
I think they do. Yeah,
they do. I mean, well, Julio Rodriguez is there. I think I have Emerson Hancock now, right? They got him from Erik.
Yeah, they do.
CJ Abrams, I know he's out for the year, but like Riley Green, Josiah Gray just got called up. That's another one for the rotation. Simeon Woods Richardson.
He's been having a down year with Richardson.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
Okay. Still's got that prospect pedigree though. So I mean,
he does.
Yeah, it's an interesting team. Curious, what are his stats this year? Because I wonder if he factor into the Blue Jays rotation at some point this year. Oh, yeah, that walk rate sucks. 5.16.
Yeah, it is not great.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, but maybe he'll be better.
Maybe he will. And the rest of the farm has looked really solid too anyway.
Oh yeah. And if he like trades Robbie Ray, you know, he's gonna add another blue chip prospect to that list. So You have any thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, no, other than the fact that you did not play well at all this week. I mean, 9 stolen bases are good, and your pitching stats were good, but your offense was just dreadful. And yeah, it probably takes a little bit of the pressure off of you that you won't be going undefeated. I mean, or that you won't be going perfect this year. You still have not lost a game. But yeah, you're still going to be number one regardless. And I just won't be with a 0 in the loss in the tie column.
Yeah. Also, another fun tidbit: every team in the league is now tied at least once, with me tying.
That is fun. And Alex and Zach have now tied 3 times, which would be absurd in a normal year. But EPO has tied 6 times, and that's just blowing all of our tie fun facts out of the water.
Yeah, there's only 5 teams with one tie. The other 7 have 2 or more ties. I mean, even having 2 ties in a year is kind of like wow. I guess at the even number of categories, it makes it more likely. Like like in the basketball league, for example, we have 9 categories, so that's harder to tie. But 12 categories makes it a bit easier. But still, that's like 3 or 4 times more already than we had in like either the first 2 seasons. So it'll be interesting to see how many ties do you think are going to have at the end of the season when it is all said and done. Right now, there are 24 ties, so 12 matchups have tied in 14 weeks.
That's crazy. I mean, I'm a little surprised it's not more than that.
It
It
feels
felt
like
like a lot.
Yeah, it feels like more because there's like 24 ties listed in the standings, but that means 12 matchups.
Right,
It
exactly.
feels like more when you're adding those up, but
I guess so. And maybe it feels like more when you're predicting a tie every week.
that is true. You do predict the tie pretty much every week. I mean, but we've averaged a tie a week, so it's not like you doing that is like off, like is bad. It's actually the right thing to do, just like statistically.
Yeah, that is true. But yeah, do we want to talk about my matchup now?
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, I'll let you talk about this one, but I'll set the stage very quickly. Erik would have beaten you after 7 days. You came back, you won. I think there was a lot of concern going in, and I had actually put this into Slack when we didn't do the episode on July 4th weekend, so right before these matchups started, that despite putting you at number 2 in my power rankings after the first 11 weeks, I thought you and Erik had flip-flopped. I thought Erik was now the second best and you were the third best, partially because of Bauer being out, but also just some other factors. And I mean, you came through and pulled out a win. Why don't you get into that a bit?
Yeah, so I was very, very thrilled, as you can imagine, to finally have beaten Erik. I had never beaten him before. We had tied once in year 1, but he beat me every other time. So I got my first ever victory against that team. And it was a hard fought one. I mean, the final score was 7-5. He was beating me up until the very last day, and until the afternoon of the last day when I hit a couple doubles. I believe I hit 4 on that Sunday to win it. And yeah, I really needed every last double, every last hold. I only got 3 of them. My pitching was not amazing. I did get 6 saves, but my ERA and WHIP have been concerning for a few weeks now, so I'm a little worried about that. But really, like we talked about last week, we were saying that I had a lot of opportunities to win, but Erik didn't have any opportunities to blow me out. So his margin of error was really slim with the lead he had, and I proved that by going out and flipping it. I tried to stream a lot of holds guys to get that flipped, and in the end, it was Hector Neris who got the deciding hold. And I guess on the whole, if we look at the standings now, I'm a full game ahead of him. We split our season series, so that tiebreaker's out the window, and things are just looking good for my team. I do have a lot of guys out currently, but so does everyone, and I'm I guess I'd say I'm the favorite for the 2 seed. I'm maybe even the clear favorite. I mean, I'm not, it's certainly no guarantee, and there's a lot of season left, but I feel decently confident in how my team is playing and my likelihood of getting the bye.
I wouldn't say the clear favorite. I mean, you are a game up. So, I mean, it's simply if he wins one more game than you the rest of the season, which would not be out of line, you two would be tied there. You do. So Cam and I went through, and we don't know 100% for sure what the second tiebreaker is because they are tied head to head. But if it is the same as what basketball and hockey does, which is what I suspect it is, and it goes to divisional record, Cam has a slight edge in divisional record right now, but it's not insurmountable for Erik by any means. That being said, we should know that tiebreaker, who would get that advantage within the next 2 weeks because divisional play is going to end and there will be out of division play for the remainder of the regular season. But yeah, I mean, I do think this makes you the favorite. You are a game up. We talked about this. Who don't you have to play again in the other division? And who doesn't Erik have to play again? Because that can make a real difference. If I recall.
So I don't have to play Clayton and Jake again.
That might be big the way that they're playing right now.
And I believe Erik doesn't have to play Anthony again.
Yeah, so I mean, the way Clayton and Jake are playing right now, that might be pretty negligible. And we'll talk about.
They beat me already.
Oh, yeah, they did. That's right. Erik beat Anthony, but it was 6-5-1, so it was pretty close. So that's actually important too, because having that tiebreaker over Anthony could, if they do finish with the same record like they do right now. But yeah, it's man. It's gonna be a close one. I totally expect that the bye is gonna come down to the final week of the regular season. I don't think we're gonna know before then.
I think you're right, and it's a very, very, very big bye. I mean, not that I'm expecting any of the teams vying for the 6th seed to be super competitive, but I mean, 2 versus 3 is always a big deal.
Well, the other thing too, and again, I'm not going to assume whoever's 3 is going to beat the team who is 6, but in a hypothetical world where that does happen, whoever is the bye will have the advantage over to whichever one of you is the 3 seed. And given that the league is averaging almost a tie a week, it's not out of the realm of possibility that, you all would tie. And I mean, you and Erik very a couple of things go differently and you two would have tied this week. And whoever's the higher seed will advance if you two tie. So that definitely puts some more pressure on the lower seed there. And, I think it's going to be really important to get one of those buys. And I think it will very much increase the likelihood of that team making it to the finals. I'm not saying that a team who doesn't get the bye can't make the finals, but it's going to make it a lot harder.
I think you're right. And I think it's most likely going to be me versus Erik to decide who goes to the finals, unless something weird happens. And it's going to be really important to have that tiebreaker in that finals matchup or in the semifinals matchup.
Well, I will say one thing that's been interesting the first few years when you look at the playoff matchups is there hasn't really been any major upsets. And it's interesting because we've seen it in the other M-SABR dynasty leagues. So we haven't really seen it in baseball. We've had a couple of times where the 3 seed has beaten the 2 seed in the semis. That happened in the first season and the second season with EBO beating me in season 1, they were the 3, I was the 2. And then with Erik beating EBO in season 2, Erik was the 3 and EBO was the 2. But we haven't seen anything like a 6 beating the 3 or, a 1 seed getting upset. The 1 seeds made the finals every year. So it'll be interesting, to see if there are any upsets this year, or if this just kind of plays out as we are kind of predicting, where it's going to be me versus one of you or Erik in the finals, which that's what I put my money on, but anything can happen.
That's right. Anything can happen. And yeah, which matchup do we want to talk about next?
Let's see. Do we want to dive into the EBO versus Ruthvik and Nick matchup? Was kind of surprising for me because I just did not see EBO blowing them out, despite the fact that Ruthvik and Nick's team is just not playing very well at all, simply because EBO hasn't been playing well and they've been playing a bunch of close matchups. But their offense finally came out to play. And while their whip was high, like the rest of their pitching stats were not that bad. And they were able to pull out a pretty convincing 10-2 win, which is keeping them relevant in the playoff hunt.
Yeah, this definitely did keep them relevant. And it was a big offensive week for them. Their on base was 371, and it was a week where a lot of teams had high on base percentages. It wasn't even the highest a team had, but their strategy for the most part worked. I would have liked to have seen a lower whip from them and maybe another hold or two, but they did win those categories anyway, and the offense looked remarkable. I mean, 89 runs was the most by 9. 14 stolen bases was the most by 5. 22 homers was third most. And yeah, like you said, they're kind of relevant again, tied with Andrew, which makes them relevant.
Yeah. That means they're only a game back in playoffs. I mean, they could realistically make it.
Yeah, could you imagine? There's no one really running that team. A team with just no owner going in on the back of the players on its team. That would be fun.
No, it would. I mean, I would not be totally surprised if Zane makes a move or two. There are a couple of obvious sell candidates on his team right now. But I don't think he's going to bloat his team up in any way. I think whoever he's going to pass his team on to, he wants to give them pretty much free reign to make the necessary changes. And, I kind of speculate that perhaps if we find an interested owner in the next few weeks, maybe they kind of co-own with Zane for the rest of the year. And then they kind of take control of the trade deadline and their destiny. But I do think EBO has all the pieces to be a playoff team. I mean, we've said this all year, or we said this at the beginning of the year, rather. And it just hasn't worked out for them. So I'm not ready to count them out. I do think with Zane being a lame duck owner, though, it does kind of cap their ceiling, because he's not going to kind of do what he did in prior seasons and just finagle some trades and the next thing they're really taking off. So but for his sake, and just for how fun it's been to be in leagues with him, I hope he has one final run in him. I'd like to see a 3v6 playoff matchup where it's him versus one of you or Erik, because I think that would be a really fun matchup to follow. And honestly, I could really see that ending in an upset with just how tricky it can be to play against his team.
Yeah, it's tricky to play them for sure. And that's why I was surprised to see them win 10 categories, because it really feels like all of their matchups are just going down to the wire.
Well, I think this speaks to how bad Ruthvik and Nick's team's been.
That's true. Yeah. Can we talk about that briefly before we move on? They
Do
had one save and two holds. The ERA and WHIP were really terrible this week. Um, this team is supposed to thrive on its pitching. This team uh, is, we thought going to the year, the maybe the best rotation in the league. And yeah, injuries haven't helped, but they have been awful. And they're hitting, which was we were not expecting to be good, has not surprised in a good way. And I mean, yeah, they've been just free falling.
Well, I think if you take a closer look at this team, right? So I think you would say their top three starters going into the season were DeGrom, Bieber, and Gallen. And I know DeGrom's been fantastic, but he's also left a lot of games with injury. So you're taking away some of those quality starts. Bieber's been out since June, and he's just starting to catch again. Gallen's been out for most of the year, and he hasn't looked great when he's been healthy. Davies has been kind of a bust. Marco Gonzalez hasn't been as good in previous years. Kim has been pretty decent. Kikuchi has been pretty decent, but that just hasn't been enough. And then Lamet's been hurt. Savali's hurt. They had Kevin Gosman last year, and I mean, he wasn't as good last year as he was this year, but he was still very good, and they traded him for Chris Sale, and Sale spent the entire year on the IL. So, I mean, injuries have just ravaged this team, and I mean, if you want to look offensively, Acuna's hurt, and Bregman's hurt, and I mean, those are two of their best three bats, and at other times this year, like McNeil's been hurt, Conforto's been hurt, Jose Abreu's been a bit banged up. Didi Gregorius has been on the IL. So, I mean, Keston Hura has underperformed. So, it's just not their season. And I know Ruthvik's been kind of busy too. And I think that's kind of prevented him from maybe being a bit more proactive and kind of making some of these replacements in the lineup. But, I think he kind of recognizes that this just isn't his year. And I mean, they're still in the playoff hunt though. He's still a game back, but I'm not really optimistic.
Yeah, I will say it is nice to see Kikuchi pitching so well this year, but other than that, I am not optimistic either.
No, I feel like a lot had to go wrong for them to not compete this year, and like close to everything they needed to not compete this year has happened.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what is the next matchup we want to look at?
Great question. Let's see if I can pull the matchups up here. Let's talk about Anthony versus Yuki. I mean, Anthony just barely scraped it out. Kind of on the strength of his pitching staff. He had a similar week that I did, except he was able to tie one offensive category, and that got him the win. But like, I don't think he really stood out in any particular category while doing it. He only had 51 ribbies, which was 26 less than Yuki 77. He had a 319 OBP, which was not good. Even like on the pitching, I mean, your 355 or 351 ERA, 121 whip was decent, but a lot of what he won was just kind of based off of quantity rather than kind of the quality of the pitching. So, and I feel like Anthony's been playing a lot of close matchups lately. And against teams that like aren't particularly good. I mean, he tied Alex and Zach the week before. He had a 4-7-1 loss to Conor. He also lost to you and Erik. I mean, tied EVO. Like, what are you thinking of this team? I have a hard time. Like somehow he's tied with Erik, but it feels like Erik has played like substantially better than Anthony.
Yeah, Anthony's winning a lot of tight ones, and it doesn't feel like he's been playing that well. I didn't feel like I was sweating that much when I played him. It feels like, yeah, the pitching has been solid, but the hitting was really bad.
And that feels
And
like kind of a theme too.
yeah, and I mean, Yuki's hitting wasn't great either. Besides the 389 on base, which was remarkable. But yeah, Anthony seems to be doing just enough to win most weeks, and I'm not 100% sure that's going to be repeatable. But at the same time, he's well ahead of. I guess he's only half a game ahead of 5, but he's well ahead of 6 and 7. So really, I mean, he can afford to coast, and this is the easy part of his schedule where he picks up wins. But once he gets to the back half, I know he doesn't have to play Erik again, but I don't. I mean, he's. I don't think he's going to be that close against you or me or even say EBO.
Yeah, and I mean, well, he doesn't have to play Erik again. He still has to play me, which I believe he does next week. And then he plays Conor. He's going to play, some of these other teams fighting for a playoff spot. So it's not going to be smooth sailing. I think it's part of the reason why, while the standings look a bit jumbled right now, when you look at like teams' remaining schedules, I think you could kind of figure out, all right, it's more likely that X team is going to do better than Y team. I think that's why I have a bit more faith in Erik beyond the fact that I think his team is just playing better. But Anthony seems like one of the teams who could benefit the most from like a couple big playoff or a couple big trade deadline acquisitions, and also getting Mike Trout back, which I think he should be back pretty soon, is inevitably going to help that offense quite a bit. So I think I mentioned on last week's podcast, there's no reason he should be starting or even rostering like a Shed Long, for example. There's no reason that, he needs to be rostering like Guillermo Heredia, so there's room for improvement here.
Mm-hmm. And as for Yuki, his team now drops to 2-11-1, which is a half a game behind Daniel and Alex and Greg. They're the worst team in the league currently, even though I think they might, even though I still had them better than that team in the power rankings. What is fortunate for Yuki is that he does own all 3 of his draft picks up in the upcoming draft. So he'll be able to make 3 really good picks. Plus he owned Daniel, Alex, and Greg's second rounder. So 4 picks right near the front of their round. And he could really kind of jumpstart that farm system.
Yeah, I think he could. He's got to make the right moves. And again, he really needs to take advantage of this trade deadline. He could speed up a rebuild by like a year or 2 if he makes the right moves at the deadline. And especially his old starting pitchers, like if Kershaw and Maeda and Wainwright and Keuchel are on his roster, and Jansen too, like if they're on his roster past August 20th, Yuki has done something wrong. There's nothing he benefits by having any of those guys on his roster. But he can only gain by trading those guys away. And hopefully he's not stubborn and he actually follows through with it, or hopefully, he doesn't get cold feet or overthinks it. But I mean, I think if there's one thing I could predict for sure at this trade deadline is that it's that Yuki needs to make trades, period.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it looks like we've got 2 matchups left. So I guess this one was close. Conor beat Andrew 7-5. I picked Andrew to win just because Andrew had been playing super well lately, and I think he played decently. The doubles number was very good. The on base The stolen bases were very good. He had 7 quality starts, which was good, and a solid whip as well. But unfortunately, Conor, he was able to take 5 of the 6 pitching categories, and just do well enough in hitting. He only won by 6 RBI, and he pulled out the victory to improve 8-5-1.
Yeah, I don't think either of them were particularly impressive on offense, other than the fact that Andrew had 28 doubles, which again is just so fluky of a category. And then the 369 OBP was nice, especially considering he's been a low OBP team like all season. I think Conor, it's interesting because Andrew had one more start than Conor, but Conor had almost double the amount of strikeouts that Andrew did. So not sure how that happened, but I mean, it just felt like a very average week for both of them, and Conor happened to just be very solid in the pitching categories, and that kind of overcame the mediocre offense. And again, I mean, I've said this over and over again. I think that's part of Conor's problem is that he's not really standing out most weeks. He's not really blowing anybody out. He's like kind of like Anthony in the sense that he's doing just enough to win, but I don't know if that necessarily gives him a super high ceiling. I think that the only difference is that Conor has been a bit more aggressive on the trade market, and I wonder if that might help him a little more. But it's tricky. I think they're both squarely in that kind of third tier of teams, if we're calling me a tier and if we're calling you and Erik a tier, which is kind of what we said when we did the power rankings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the tiers are mixed up, but I still think you are your own tier and me and Erik are our own tier.
Yeah, and I think Anthony and Conor are kind of in the same tier at this point, but I would say I think they have separated themselves from kind of 6 and below. I do think that Clayton and Jake have an argument to be in that third tier, but I'm not ready to put them there yet.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else we want to say about either of these teams?
No, not really. Andrew's hanging in there. He doesn't seem confident in his team for this year, but I like believing in them.
Yeah, well, I think the one thing I like about the way Andrew's approaching this is I think he recognizes that, like, I wouldn't say that like he thinks this is a fluke, but I think he recognizes that his team has probably overperformed slightly, and that in the long run, if he tries to make some sort of push for this year, it's just going to hurt him. So while I don't necessarily think he's going to be a playoff team, because I just don't think he's going to make moves that's going to help him this year. And in fact, I could see him making a move or two that would actually weaken his team this year. And I think he's already done that, i.e. when he traded Jake McGee to you. You know, I think that, he's going to hang around, but it's just he's not going to be able to do enough. So, but kudos to him for being 5-8-1. I mean, he's been a fun story to track all season.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, the final matchup that was left, Jake won and Clayton won once again. They beat the Fighting Bellies 8-2. They had a good week with 21 home runs, 70 runs, 361 on base. And all the pitching categories were really good. I would like to point out, especially those 10 quality starts.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Definitely a lot. And I know it was a longer week, but that is still one a day. And that's another team that they're like, at least in terms of pitching, maybe a better version of Alex and Zach. And it feels like a lot of the individual pitchers are worse. They seem like they're getting a lot of that just kind of annoying you with having so many starters, but maybe having a better overall team than Alex and Zach do.
No, they're definitely very volume dependent. And sometimes that works for them. And sometimes, a team like you or me who has a lot of high quality pitchers, but Even like for me, for example, I have like 11 starters on my roster, but like half of them are hurt. So even with like 6 or 7 starters, I could go in and just beat them because I'll have a lower ERA. And while I'll have less starters, a higher percentage of my starters will get quality starts than theirs. So it's like even that they had 10 quality starts this week, but it took them 17 starters to do that. So, that's like 60-ish%. So, that being said, I think that's the right strategy for them, and I think that they know what they're doing, and I think that they're on the right track. I don't think this is their year, but I mean, they're doing what they need to do right now. They're blowing out bad teams, and the Bellies are not a good team. So, and if I'm not mistaken, actually, they might have tied the first time they played in a game that the Clayton and Jake could have easily won. Yeah, it was 6-6 the last time they played.
Yeah, Clayton and Jake probably should have 2 more wins than they do already have. They've had just a lot of close decisions that did not go their way.
Yeah, there's like a couple of like bad decisions at the beginning of the year with the way that they've kind of played their roster, and things have gotten better for them. I think they've not only played a bit smarter, but they've had a couple guys bounce back. Luis Castillo started the season off terribly, and now he's like been a lot better the past couple of months. So it's gonna be interesting. I don't really have much to say about the Fighting Bellies. I mean, we know that they're not really, checking too much. Maybe with Greg taking over, they could be a bit more interesting. And I think there's a lot of interesting talent on this roster, but like, an injured Brandon Crawford's in their lineup. Just like stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Crawford, this team, they've got a bunch of good players, and then they've had guys like Brandon Crawford, who they already had, who is having a surprisingly good year, shockingly good. And then they picked up guys early like Cedric Mullins, who has been amazing. This team, if they watched it from beginning to end, they would be. I don't want to say their playoff team. I mean, actually, they didn't add Brandon Crawford until May 10th, but they have a really good core here.
Yeah. I mean, well, like Bellinger, they have, I know he hasn't been negative this year, but I mean, he's obviously still a stud. Mullins, Yoli Gurriel's had a very good year. Justin Turner's had a very good year. Lourdes Gurriel's bounced back. Mark Canha's been really good. Corey Seager's about to be back. And like, even their rotation, like Alcantara, Bassett, McCullers, I guess Dustin Mazer, but like Taiwan Walker. This is not a bad rotation. And Eduardo Rodriguez, I think, has been bouncing back a bit. So like they have an interesting squad there. Maybe Greg takes over and he does a bit better with this. I mean, I know he was in Colorado last week, so I'm kind of like giving him a pass as to like not really doing anything up until this point. But actually, they did make 2 matchup acquisitions already this week. I don't know if that was Greg or if that was Daniel, but we'll see what happens. This team needed another owner, and I'm glad they have it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Ready to move on to next week?
Yes, I sure am. So there's a couple interesting matchups that to preview for this week, but you want to tell everyone which one we picked?
Yes, the most interesting matchup of next week. We decided that it would be Bo with the Flow versus Team Resnick. And these are 2 teams. We've talked a lot about the standings this week, but Bo with the Flow recently just moved into the 6th spot. Anthony is tied for 3rd, but he's not holding the tiebreaker. This is a really big matchup for both teams. If Anthony wants to keep pace with Erik, he needs to win. And if Clayton and Jake want to keep pace with the other 3 teams that are surrounding them, then they need to win. And a tie wouldn't really do either team that much good. So yeah, really, really important matchup. as far as playoff seeding for the 3 through 6 teams.
Yeah. And the one thing I'll add is, despite the fact that Anthony has the better record, it feels like Clayton and Jacob have played better.
I agree.
And I don't know who's going to win. I guess we're going to find out who I predict is going to win here in a second. But I think this is close to a toss-up. I mean, I think there's just a lot of factors at play here. So, we'll see what happens. It's going to be fun. And I can't wait to watch this play out.
For sure. Early in the episode, I mentioned Tyler Naquin. It's a potential trade chip. He just had his 5th hit of the day to tie the game up at 10 in the 10th.
Ooh, this brings
Suarez 0 for 5.
Yeah, please, for God's sake, just get a hit. Walk it off.
He's going to ground into a double play here. I guarantee it.
Nah, he's going to strike out. Actually, you know what? He's grounded into quite a few double plays lately. I buy that. He's been really weird to own because, like, when he gets like the homers have been really nice, as have the doubles, but like he's not really doing anything else. As like my last bench bat, he's been adequate, but like it's.
I mean, your on base percentage has tanked since you acquired him.
Yeah, but like that was because I had a 280 OBP last week, and that was like my entire team just collectively shat the bed. And he actually sat on my bench for quite a few of those days, so it wasn't even really his fault. And some of the days I sat him, he was actually like really good. So it just I don't know, man. He's complicated.
He's complicated. But yeah, what are the pick'em standings? Is that where we left off? Did you say those already? I don't remember.
No, we haven't set them yet.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, it's a 3-0 count on Suarez. Let's get ready to pick our matchups for this week. But first, how did we do last week?
Yeah, so first time all year picking myself to win didn't quite work out. I tied. I correctly picked Clayton and Jake to win, and correctly picked Anthony to win, which you also did. Me picking Conor to win and you picking Andrew to win worked in my favor because Conor beat Andrew. I picked Ruthvik and Nick and EBO to tie. You picked Ruthvik and Nick to win. We were
here. Suarez just grounded into a double play.
Classic. That drives me. He had a 3-1 count too. Like, just try and find one more ball. For fuck's sake. All right.
There's still 2 outs and a man on third.
Yeah, but like.
And Jose Peraza was the one who turned the double play.
Oh my God. I forgot he was with the Mets. Good for him. Good for Peraza. Remember when he was traded for Kyler Murray and we were all like, what the hell? And then Peraza ended up sucking and now it's just the league meme trade. Good times. But anyways, you picked Ruthvik and Nick to win. I picked Ruthvik and Nick and EBO to tie. We were both wrong, but I was less wrong. And you picked yourself and Erik to tie. I picked Erik to win. You are less wrong there, but you ended up winning. So I finished 3-1-2 on the week. You finished 2-2-2. Overall in the season, I am 52-20-12. You were 44-20-20. When you convert the ties, that puts you at 50, or that puts me at 58-26, and that puts you at 54-30. So you are 4 games behind me. You lost a game on me with picking Andrew to beat Conor. So
not my best showing.
Not your best showing, but you're still only 4 games back, and there is still plenty of season left. Without further ado, I will give my picks. I think I will rebound against Yuki. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. I think Alex and Zach will beat Daniel and Alex and Craig. I think Conor will handle Ruthvik. I think Erik will beat Andrew. I think you and EBO will play a close-ish matchup, but I think you will pull it out. And then the Clayton and Jake versus Anthony matchup is a tough one. And I'm going to pick, oh man. I think I might pick Clayton and Jake here because I just think they're playing better, and I that's literally give you like 6-5-1 or like 7-5, something like that. Neither of them is going to blow out the other, but no, I'm not predicting any ties this week. So where are you at?
I think I'm going to make a lot of very similar picks. I think I am going to beat EBO. I think Clayton and Jake and Anthony are going to be tight, but I think Clayton and Jake are going to pull it off and improve to 500. Alex and Zach are going to be the Fighting Bellies. They removed their G when they added G. You are going to rebound against Yuki. I really can't picture either Conor or Ruthvik and Nick winning, so they're probably my tie.
Same.
I can't. If I had to pick one, I'd pick Conor, but I can't really see any other matchups being a tie except for maybe Anthony versus Clayton and Jake. But I think this is my tie, and then I think Erik will handle Andrew pretty easily.
Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting to me that you're picking Conor and Ruthvik and Nick to tie, because I think despite us kind of saying that Conor has some of his flaws, I think he's playing significantly better than Ruthvik and Nick have the past couple of weeks, especially DeGrom just landing on the IL, and Acuna and Bieber and Bregman still being on the IL, and Lamet, Savali. I mean, you name it, they're on the IL. So that's interesting to me. But I think we had a consensus with the rest of the picks. So let's see if you gain a game or half a game on me this week. Slow and steady gets you back into it.
Yeah, exactly. Slow and steady. Hopefully I can do that. I felt like I really just needed to pick something that wasn't the same as all of the ones you picked.
Yeah, no, that definitely is what you need. The last time we had a week like this where you made one different pick than me, with the one different pick being a tie, you won 5-0-1 that week. So that was the week before last week. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, anything else before we wrap up here?
No, that's all I had. 40 weeks in the book. The Reds for the 11th inning put in a pitcher I've never heard of, and he immediately gave up a single. So this is not going to go well. I think it's time to call it a night.
Probably is. Yeah, the only other thing I'll add for logistical purposes is that Cam will not be on the podcast next week. Where are you going to be, Cam?
I am going to be in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. I'll be hitting a Mariners game. That'll be my 29th ballpark.
Oh shit, that's
29th awesome. Major League ballpark. I guess my 28th current Major League ballpark, because I saw the old Ranger Stadium, but not the new one. But I'm going to count it just the same. And yeah, so I'll be there. I'll be hitting up Olympic National Park, driving down the coast a bit into Oregon, seeing Mount Hood, Crater Lake, hitting Portland. So I'm not sure. I believe I'll be in Oregon at the normal recording time. But anyway, I won't be at home. I'll be with my family. And yeah, the podcast will be in good hands while I'm gone. Looking forward to hearing that episode.
Yeah, just curious, what ballparks haven't you been to then?
So after I hit Seattle, the only one I will have remaining is Petco Park in San Diego.
And I guess the new Ranger Stadium too. But interesting. Yeah. I took a tour of Petco right before I started college, and that is a beautiful stadium. Was not able to watch a game there. They were on the road when I was in San Diego, but that's a beautiful stadium. You definitely need to make it out there, and San Diego is a beautiful place. But with Cam out, we're going to try something a little different. This is the last time I'll be coming to you all for now from Charlotte. My internship ends after this week. I will be moving, so the way the logistics work, while I should be able to record, I didn't want to tie myself down to a time with a fill-in co-host. So I'll be doing something I've seen the Sleeper and the Bus do now a couple times pretty well. And that's do a solo podcast. So I'll probably be a bit shorter than our usual ones, although without Cam to stop me from rambling, I mean, who knows how long it's going to go. And Cam will most likely be able to edit it kind of at nights, and we'll kind of figure out the logistics of that. But we didn't want to have 2 of the 4 weeks in July be podcast lists. So we're going to make sure we make this work. And I am very excited to, give the solo podcast a try. Seems like it could be fun.
Yeah, definitely going to be fun. And yeah, we're looking forward to that. And we'll see you next time for that solo episode.
Yep. Take care, everyone.
Bitches and Timbs and sweaters, and we always argue about the same thing. They tell me why we gotta argue about the same thing. Well, nobody's perfect, nobody's perfect, hey, but you're perfect for me. Nobody's perfect, nobody's perfect, hey, but you're perfect for me. Rolling, we riding, he like to go inside.
This podcast is good.